It's Muppeturgy, and we enjoy being a Season 3 finale about the Cheryl Ladd episode of The Muppet Show, with our own very special guest star, Danny Horn.
Yay!
Let's not overdo it. Hey everyone, welcome back. We're so glad you've made it this far. We are here today to conclude Season 3, and we're so glad that you're here with us. I'm David Levy. Here today with me are...
Michal Richardson.
Christy Bauer.
And Adam Grossworth.
And our aforementioned guest star, Danny Horn.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Danny. Thanks for being here.
Hi. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Danny Horn. I have a long history with Muppet fandom. I created Muppet Zine back in the 90s when people used to make zines and send them through the mail. And then I created Tough Pigs in 2001 and then co-founded Muppet Wiki with Scott Hansen in 2005. And right now I'm also running Muppet Pictures, which I don't know if y'all have seen. It's a feed on Twitter and Facebook where I post 3 pictures of the Muppets every day at random intervals, which is really fun.
And sometimes they're themed and you get to guess.
Yes. Yeah, they're often themed in ways sometimes that only I understand. And so if people are listening to the podcast, they will like it. I'm excited to have like a new Muppet. That's why I'm talking about it. I finally have like a new Muppet project, like as of like 5 months ago, and that's it. Anyway, so that's who I am. Hi, I'm Danny. I'm so happy to be here
right now.
Yeah.
And it's a delight.
Yay.
I have a feeling that we have perhaps misunderstood the question.
A minor correction, but we don't like getting our pop cultural facts wrong. In the Sylvester Stallone episode, I said that both Eye of the Tiger and Living in America were featured in Rocky 3. Eye of the Tiger was introduced in Rocky 3, but Living in America was in Rocky 4. We regret the error.
Also in that episode, we had a whole discussion about why the lion sounded like Jim Henson, but is credited to Dave Goelz. Listeners on Twitter chimed in to say that no, it is definitely Dave. That's just a voice he does that happens to sound like Jim. I'm going to take their word for it.
Sure sounds like Jim.
So
Yes.
I have a fun addition. Fun, but sort of bittersweet addition. So since we last recorded, Muppet Show guest star Raquel Welch passed away, which is very sad. But in the various tributes that appeared to her online, on Bob Mackey's Instagram, he talked about her cave woman dress in the Muppet Show episode when she did Baby It's Me, and it was one of his, which we didn't know, and which we thought was very cool.
That is very cool.
Once you know, it seems very obvious.
Right, of course.
But yeah, very cool.
Once you know that Bob Mackey has an Instagram.
Also that.
Makes you want to drop everything.
Here is a Muppet News Flash.
We are here this week to talk about Season 3, Episode 24 of The Muppet Show. It was produced the week of May 9th, 1978. That may confuse you if you've been paying attention. This is the same date, according to Muppet Wiki, as the Helen Reddy episode that we talked about way back in October. So we have somehow time traveled, and the last episode in the production order was made at the same time as the 13th episode in the production order.
In production documents, the episode is referred to as 324 and as episode 72, but it was recorded the same week as Helen Reddy in episode 313. And my people checked. It's in Henson's Red Book, like on the site, that they were working with Cheryl Ladd this week. And there's also some contemporary news stories about Helen Reddy being in England this week to film The Muppet Show. We don't actually know why this is listed as 324. Both in those production documents and then kind of ever since in the running order that Henson says is official. After that week in May, there was a production break so that they could film the Muppet movie from May to November. And then when they came back in November, they shot Harry Belafonte in episode 314. I have a guess about this, which is that maybe they were planning for Cheryl Ladd to film the last episode of the season, so it was 324. And then because of the Muppet movie filming, maybe it didn't work for her schedule anymore. Like that may have changed, and therefore, like it was going to be too late for her. And so they brought her in early and did Helen Reddy and Cheryl Ladd the same week, and they just kept the production number. That is my theory.
Yeah, that would make sense. From Muppet Wiki, it's a little weird that I'm about to read this with you here, Danny, because it's possible that you wrote it. But the numbers ascribed to the episodes originate with their production code. Numbers were assigned according to factors outside of the dates in which each episode entered production, and the production of many episodes would overlap with the crew filming material for 2 separate episodes concurrently. In some cases, episodes were recorded out of their original production sequence due to the availability of the guest stars or other factors. This is like wildly out of that order, but yeah, I think it makes sense, as you said, that
And if you go to the Muppet Wiki article on this episode, it now has a thing that we just wrote and added onto it today. So thank you, Adam, for noticing this, because it made us go and add more stuff to the wiki.
You are welcome.
Yeah.
At the Museum of the Moving Image here in New York, there is a list of the season 1 production sheet with a bunch of information on it. It would be a Google sheet or an Excel document now from season 1, and we'll put a photo of it on the website. But on that, you can see where names have been erased and moved around. It's all in pencil, and there's one name that's been erased and rewritten and erased multiple times that I can't entirely make out, but it's somebody who never actually wound up appearing on the Muppet Show, I think, at all, but definitely not in season 1. So this is a thing that happened, and there we are.
It's the Chico and the Man guy.
Oh, is that who it is?
Yeah, what's
Jack
his
Albertson.
name? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So I know this because that was my addition to Muppet Wiki after we went to the museum together. I
There you go.
uploaded the photo of this and uploaded that information.
There you go. Not that I can't make it out. It's that it's someone I have never heard of, but yes, that is who it is.
Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Anyway, it aired, this episode, in New York City on November 6th, 1978, which tracks with all of these dates we just threw at you. It could not have been filmed in order, episode 24. It was number 8 in the air order, in between Alice Cooper and Pearl Bailey. So in the news this week of the episode's airing, hey, remember that New York City newspaper strike? It's over.
Yay!
Huzzah. Who won?
It has just ended. I actually don't know. I mean, I guess labor, because they held out for a really long time.
Yeah,
I hope so. So in today's paper, we have 88 Days in Review, a special news summary in the second edition. So on day 1, no, I'm just kidding.
And that's what you missed on Glee.
I mean, basically.
it is so crazy to me that the New York Times just wasn't published.
I mean, not just New York Times.
And is what, Daily News and...
I mean, Daily News, New York Post, but there were also morning papers then. So every newspaper in New York City for 88 days.
It's crazy.
It's wild.
I lived in North Jersey at this time. And my family, we got both New York Times and the Star Ledger, which is a New Jersey paper. And I have no memory of the New York Times just not existing for a couple months, but I probably wouldn't, because that wasn't the one that had comics in it.
Right.
I was going to say, because the Star Ledger had the comics. That's what I used it for.
If the Star Ledger went on a newspaper strike, that would have been a childhood trauma memory that I would still be trying to deal with in therapy.
So in the actual news of the actual day, the midterm elections are tomorrow. Also, New York governor. The New York Times has its endorsements today, which feels real late just by today's standards. There are also a bunch of election day sales. That is not a thing that still happens.
People have the day off work then? Was that why?
I don't think so.
Any excuse in 1978,
right?
Any excuse for a sale.
And I
the
think
endorsement being late would make sense because there wasn't a paper.
Oh, right.
Oh,
of course.
right.
Put that together. Yes, of course. Thank you, Chrissy. The sales thing, I think, actually is more to do with how advertising worked, right? Because the newspaper ads, the daily ads mattered, so they could do a sale tied to anything. The other headlines are, the usual mix of Middle East, Vietnam, and Cambodia. We don't need to talk about it. Saccharin is a potential carcinogen.
This is so funny to me that this comes out in 1978 because this knowledge did not stop my mother, who was a cancer survivor, from continuing to make Sweet and Low, which is saccharin, a cornerstone of our family diet for at least another decade or two.
Well, it's still only potential. And I read the article. This is still the very beginning of this news. But yeah, a decade or two does feel a little long.
But this is sort of the beginning of the shift from being a Sweet and Low society to an equal society,
yes,
and the shift from Tab to Diet Coke. So it's very important.
It is.
R.I.P. Tab, though.
Yeah.
A bunch of ads are playing catch up, which, you said that's what you missed on Glee, but it is weird. I understand the newspapers were not around, but the stores were still open. Television and radio still existed. It's everybody was living in a cave during the strike. There is literally an ad that says, here's what you've missed in the last 12 weeks at Sam Goody.
Well,
that is fantastic.
For theater fans, we always hear about these shows that should have been hits but ended up flopping because no one got to hear about them because they opened during a newspaper strike and there was no review, and so no one got to go see Leslie Ann Warren and Drat the Cat.
Yeah. But like, I get that, but like the idea that you wouldn't buy a record?
But if you didn't know it was coming out. Not everyone is like us who went to the record store every week to see what was in the new releases.
Well, and this would be
That
like
was an optimistic
reaching out specifically to the people who use the newspaper as their way of catching up with popular music.
I just feel like over the course of 12 weeks, you would have found another
you would
find a solution to this problem.
Yeah.
The Sanity ad is particularly great for our purposes because it's an amazing snapshot of the last 12 weeks in 1978 pop culture, and obviously it will be on the website. If you
It was a good time.
Yeah. Kubrick films The Shining in secrecy in English studio. I mean, I don't know how secret it is. There's an article in the New York Times. There's a column about advertising, which makes the ads for advertisers that I've talked about before make a little more sense, though those ads are not always with it. But I have to read you one of them. The Top Honchos magazine celebrates the return of the top honcho of advertising columnists. Dunn's Review, the magazine for corporate top honchos. Oh my God, stop saying honcho.
The Top Honchos magazine. So it's a magazine for honchos or by honchos or about honchos.
Correct.
Or
Also, please stop saying
Yes.
honcho.
Well, and only the top honchos though. All the
Correct.
other
Right.
all of the like medium
not the lesser.
Yeah, the medium
Yeah.
honchos.
And I
Had-
did
had
check
their own
the
thing.
gay porn magazine Honcho began publication in April 1978. So anyway, yeah, there's a bunch of ads being like, yay, the Times is back. And there's also a little thing apologizing that they didn't have room for all of the ads
Aw.
in the paper because they had such a backlog.
Who are they apologizing to? I'm sorry,
I
please
guess the
continue.
advertisers? I don't know. Maybe it wasn't an apology, but just stating that there would be more ads later. Don't worry. That's just wild, you guys. Okay, so the number one song on the Cashbox Pop charts is Hot Child in the City. We've gone back to November 1978. Does anybody want to guess what the number one album was?
Is it Grease?
It's Grease. It's The Word.
Nice.
Still the Word, or Back to Being the Word.
On television, in search of the Great Lakes Triangle. I watched it. I learned that 1/3 of all unsolved American air and sea disasters take place in the Great Lakes Triangle.
Huh.
Did they find it?
I mean, yeah, it's an area of the Great Lakes they knew where
We
it
know.
was. It wasn't a secret.
Just making a whole episode in search of it. I just hope they got
Yeah, they did.
and got out again.
Do you remember what a big deal the Bermuda Triangle was when we were kids? Like
Yeah.
that was I feel like we heard about it all the time. I was so scared of it. When I eventually went to Bermuda, I was like, "Oh my God, am I ever coming
no.
back?"
Yeah.
Do people still
Like the
worry
equivalent
about
of
it?
quicksand.
Yeah,
Great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, did all the quicksand move to the Bermuda Triangle?
That was the real problem.
Over on CBS, we have WKRP in Cincinnati. People, which we have discussed before, they've fully given up. There's no blurb. There's no description. I couldn't even find one. They're just not even trying anymore. MASH. On One Day at a Time, an unmarried classmate of Barbara's unexpectedly arrives at the Romano household with a baby. Scandal. And Lou Grant. NBC Celebrity Family Feud, featuring the cast of Eight is Enough, Soap, Barney Miller, and Welcome Back, Kotter. I can't say if that sounds like fun or just like a headache. But I would watch Robert Guillaume.
it sort of depends on
Family
who's
Feud.
paired against whom, right?
Yeah, and on which soap cast members show up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And then football. Nobody cares. ABC, Little House on the Prairie, Mary's Wedding.
Ooh.
Definitely a big deal. Is there a dust storm? Of course there's a dust storm.
Oh.
Obviously, of course I watched it. And then a TV movie, Rainbow, about a young Judy Garland, played by Andrea McArdle, best known as being the original Annie in the Broadway musical Annie. Also Piper Laurie and Rue McClanahan. Andrea McArdle and Piper Laurie, both famous for properties about terrifying children. No, nothing for that one. Okay, thanks. Piper Laurie was in Carrie. See, so okay.
Oh, God.
I understood.
We got it. Yeah.
Oh. We've written down a list of your good points and your bad points. This might not be the best time to bring it up.
Tic-Tac-Doe is on Channel 11. I just haven't noticed that before, and I loved Tic-Tac-Doe when I was a kid.
It's so weird to think of that as a primetime show, because that was definitely like afternoon block when I was a kid.
It might have been late night. I didn't actually write down the time. And Channel 11 was definitely syndicated. So
You saw Tic-Tac-Doe and you got excited.
I just made a note. Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't. At 9 p.m. on Channel 9, 1973's Silent Night, Bloody Night. Christmas just gets earlier every year.
And bloodier.
And the New York gubernatorial debate is on Channel 5 at 11:30 p.m. What?
11:30.
Right, the night before the election. What?
Well, you got to get those last minute swing voters to.
I know, but the past was weird. Okay.
Hey, tonight our very special guest is one of the loveliest and most talented ladies of the entire entertainment world, Cheryl Ladd.
Cheryl Ladd, singer, actor, author, and angel. Born in South Dakota in 1951, Cheryl Jean Stoppelmoor hit the road following her high school graduation, touring with the country western band The Music Shop. The group hit LA in 1970 and promptly disbanded. However, this put Cheryl, now going by the name Sherry Moore, in the right place at the right time to be discovered by songwriter Danny Jansen, who was assembling a girl group to provide the voices for the Hanna-Barbera television adaptation of Archie Comics' Josie and the Pussycats. Sherry was cast as Melody, the drummer, and the group recorded an album and a number of singles, in addition to providing voice acting for the cartoon. The music failed to make a splash, though, so a planned tour was canceled and the girls were replaced with other voices for the follow-up series, Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space. A few years ago, Rhino Handmade did reissue all of their original Josie and the Pussycats recordings. The CD is extraordinarily hard to find, but it is on YouTube and it will be in our show notes. And it is a delight if you like that sort of thing. It's very much like right at the intersection of like Motown and the Brill Building. It's really lovely. Cheryl spent most of the 70s making one-off appearances in television shows, credited as Cheryl Stoppelmoor until 1974, when she appeared on Happy Days on the episode Wish Upon a Star as the celebrity that Richie has won a date with.
Aww.
That's because in 1973, she married actor David Ladd, the Nepo baby of Alan Ladd. Cheryl's breakthrough year was 1977 when she joined the second season of Charlie's Angels to replace the departing Farrah Fawcett Majors. She played Chris Monroe, the younger sister of Fawcett's character, and would remain with the show through its cancellation in 1981. With her newfound visibility, Cheryl returned to the recording studio and released an eponymous album in 1978. Cheryl Ladd, the album, reached 129 on the Billboard 200 chart, and her single Think It Over peaked at 34 on the Hot 100. Her follow-up album, 1979's Dance Forever, peaked at 179. Her subsequent album was released only in Japan. In 1980, she and David Ladd divorced, although she kept his name. In 1981, she married music producer Brian Russell, and they remain together to this day. In the 80s and beyond, Cheryl largely acted in films and TV movies, although she was the lead on the TV show One West Waikiki in the mid-90s, and she had a recurring role as James Caan's wife on the show Las Vegas. I mentioned up top that she's an author. She wrote a children's book in 1996 and a quasi-memoir that's mostly about golf in 2005. Relevant to our interests, Cheryl hit Broadway in the 2000 revival of Annie Get Your Gun, taking over the role from Bernadette Peters prior to Reba McEntire's sensational run on the show. I think Reba McEntire did such a tremendous job with it that we sort of forget that Cheryl did it before her. She's still around. In 2021, she was in the musical film A Cowgirl Song, and she was on Dancing with the Stars last year, although not for very long. That's what I have about Cheryl Ladd. Does anyone have Cheryl Ladd memories they'd like to share?
I remember like the interesting thing that was happening with Cheryl Ladd and with Charlie's Angels was that there was this phenomenon called jiggle television, which is actually like a phrase that an executive at NBC coined to make fun of what was happening at ABC. Was like jiggle television was this phrase that described like a show that would have beautiful women in loose clothing so that you would like they'd run around, you'd see their breasts jiggle and their buttocks jiggle. And so the shows that I've seen, you know, Charlie's Angels really was like the number one jiggle television show. And then Three's Company and Wonder Woman also were considered that.
And then eventually Muppets Tonight.
And Muppets Tonight. So Charlie's Angels was like this weird mix of like crime fighting action show and a show about like famously gorgeous women not wearing bras fighting crime. And it's like this weird duality that I think is kind of incorporated into the Muppet Show episode. Like I heard your episode about Raquel Welch a little while ago, and it's kind of similar, like mid 1970s American public consciousness kind of like working out the question, what are women for? Like women, like why do we have them and what are they like? That's what we were doing in the mid 70s was just
What
like
if they were
working
pigs.
Yeah, just like working that out as
What if they fought
question.
crime? What if they, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that was definitely kind of at the heart of Charlie's Angels, and I think becomes part of the Muppet Show as well.
I know we're not a Charlie's Angels podcast, but I had no associations with Cheryl Ladd before this week as we've been preparing. So now that I've watched a little bit of Charlie's Angels, I'm more confused about what it was than before I watched it.
Yes.
Because it's, at least in all the episodes that I watched, they go undercover to solve whatever case they're solving. They have to go and be in a beauty pageant or ice skate or learn to be stewardesses.
Or a backers audition for a Broadway musical, which is the only episode of it that I've seen, and it's
Cocktail
wild.
waitress.
And you don't
I've never
understand?
seen it at all, but my pitch for it, if I had to pitch it based on just cultural knowledge, is Mission Impossible meets The Love Boat.
Oh, there is in fact a crossover episode, two-parter, where they go on the Love Boat.
See?
I learned today.
Of course. And in all the episodes that you've all seen, did they always use their real, or the characters' real names when they're supposedly undercover?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, this is beauty pageant contestant Chris, who, like, if there was Google, then somebody could just find out that she's.
I think possibly the people making the show thought that the audience was not smart enough to be able to like track them if they put on different names.
I mean, I didn't end up learning their individual names. I know that Cheryl Ladd was Chris.
Yeah, I'm like 2 years too young for Charlie's Angels, but I too watched a few episodes this week, and what?
It's good stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean it is. It's like campy, and I mean they're all three of them. So I did grow up watching Scarecrow and Mrs. King, so I have like a lot of affection for Kate Jackson.
Yeah,
and then Cheryl Ladd and the other one are great. Like they're so. Thank you. They're so charming, and both that and I watched some Wonder Woman for another recent episode, and what surprised me about both of them is like how dull they are. Like with like these really great performances at their center, or I shouldn't say great performances, but like charismatic performers at their center is what I should say. And yes, quite a lot of boobs, of revealing costumes, but like the pacing of this time period was something different.
Yeah.
But they're so charming that it didn't not make me want to watch more episodes and root for them because they're all so delightful.
I mean, Kate Jackson was clearly like too good for Charlie's Angels.
Yes,
and she's playing that. I feel like in every minute, she's like, "Look, I'm a way better actress than I should be."
Where Cheryl Ladd is exactly the right amount of good for Charlie's Angels.
No, yeah, you're totally right.
Well, I think this Muppet Show episode, this might be a good segue, maybe shows that she's a little better than she needs to be.
Oh, are we talking about the Muppet Show?
I mean, eventually. There's no rush.
Exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get there. Why don't you get me started? Christy, what'd you think of the episode?
So I went into this with no Cheryl Ladd associations at all, other than knowing that she was on Charlie's Angels. If anything, like I had seen that one episode of Charlie's Angels where they're undercover at a workshop for a musical because somebody was like, "This is extremely up your alley." But like, if anything, I have like less than zero associations because one of my favorite Mystery Science Theater episodes of all time is the movie Angel's Revenge, which was knockoff Charlie's Angels.
Ooh.
I recommend it heartily.
Oh, way worse. Yeah.
It's way worse, but hilarious because it's all a bunch of pretty women that you've never seen and a bunch of really famous dudes like Jack Palance and Jim Backus and Pat Buttram. Like it's wild. Anyway,
on a bad day.
Yeah. All of them on a bad day.
Yeah.
But this episode of The Muppet Show, which is the thing we were actually talking about, is delightful. You know, I think the season is ending with more of a whimper than a bang. Like, it's very gentle, but I had a good time.
David?
Yeah, I also had less of an association with Cheryl Ladd than I maybe thought I did. Looking at her credits, Josie and the Pussycats is really the only thing I had previous experience with. So I didn't know what to expect, and I came away not really having a sense of her at all. Like, she does nothing wrong. Like, I think she's perfectly fine, but she doesn't leave an impression. And that's sort of true of the episode as a whole. Like, it's good. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It just didn't leave a huge impression on me.
Michal?
Yeah, this was a lovely episode, and it slipped right out of my brain. It was like Jell-O. This was like something very sweet and fluffy, and every time I came back to rewatch it, I was like, oh, right, there's so much to love, and then I forgot all about it again. But Cheryl Ladd seems like a delight, watching her and Miss Piggy chew on the furniture and then karate chop it. Wonderful.
I love it. It was a high point of the season for me. I don't think it's going to make my top 10, overall, but it's weird because I sort of hate all of these songs and never want to hear them in any other context. But as performed here, they're like so perfectly Muppety, and I thought she was great. I also had no prior context for her. But yeah, I think it's fantastic. I'm looking forward to talking about the rest of it. Danny, you asked to go last. I can't wait. What'd you think?
I asked for this episode specifically. So when I was talking to David a little while ago about like coming on the show as a guest, and he asked, is there an episode that I wanted to do? And I said like, oh, I really want to be there for the Cheryl Ladd episode. And David, I don't remember if I told you why, but I will tell you now.
Something about Western. That's all I remember.
Something about what?
Something involving Western. I don't remember if that was Western as a genre or Western as in like Western civilization.
Must have been civilization. All right, so here's my explanation. Is like when I was in college, like stepping back in time for a minute for me, when I was in college, I majored in post-structuralist literary theory, which is basically a 4-year degree in impenetrable Discordian trickster jargon, where I learned how to deconstruct rhetorical structures and like break down unstated oppositional relationships to absent signifiers. Like it's basically a secret code that was developed.
So you're a hit at parties.
Yeah, developed by people who read a lot of books that makes you sound smart, even if you're talking complete nonsense, which is how I still use it today. I don't usually talk like that because I have a healthy respect for other people's time. But talking like that is literally what my parents paid above market rates for me to learn how to do. And so queer theory kind of grew out of post-structuralist literary theory in the late 90s when I was really ready for it. So I was reading a lot of like queer readings of television shows and fictional characters. And so when I started talking to Muppet fans on the internet in the late 90s, I was delighted to discover that there was a disproportionately high number of queer people in Muppet fandom, which I think is probably still true today. So I had a lot of fun flirting with dudes. And then I also had a bunch of like post-structuralist thoughts about it. So in 2000, I decided I was going to write a pseudo-academic book called Gentle Frogs, Tough Pigs, A Queer History of TV's Favorite Puppet Characters, where my general thesis was that there's something like inherently gender destabilizing and queer positive about the Muppets and Jim Henson's work that queer people just kind of like naturally gravitated to. And so when I created the website Tough Pigs in 2001, like I didn't think that I was creating a Muppet fan site. That was going to be the website where I'd promote and sell my queer theory book, which I did not actually write. But that's
not too late.
Yeah, that's why the site, it really is. But that's why the site is called The World Is Not Ready Anymore. But I had so much fun. So that's why it's called Tough Pigs. I had so much fun just like putting the site together that I abandoned the book and just decided like, I'm just going to make a funny Muppet fan site, which was the correct choice. But in this episode, the reason why I'm talking about this is that like I was doing like textual analysis of a lot of Muppet material. And this specific episode of The Muppet Show was especially interesting to me in the way that it breaks down these questions of gender and identity and sexuality. So I'm excited today because I finally get to talk about how interesting this episode is in terms of queer theory, which I'm hoping that's okay. Like I clearly did not ask permission for this,
okay.
But
you were in the right
listened.
place.
You have listened to the podcast, so yes,
that is
okay.
what I want to do. Excellent.
Well, let's get into it.
Yeah,
We better.
Cheryl Ladd? 20 seconds to curtain, Miss Ladd.
Oh, thank you, Scooter. I just can't seem to get my costume off.
Off? You're supposed to put it on.
I know, but first he takes it off, and then I'll...
So, yep, Cheryl Ladd can't seem to get her costume off of Lunch Encounter Monster, who I guess is wearing a dress. I didn't even catch what the costume was.
I was trying to figure it out. I think it is the top, like the vest part of her big parade number.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like black and white, kind of checked. But like clearly not. It's like the same fabric, but clearly not the same.
They're not the same size.
Actual thing. They're not, yeah. But this, like, it starts right from the jump with this, like, male-coded monster wearing the female guest star's dress. And kind of like Raquel Welch, like, earlier in the season, like, Cheryl Ladd was specifically known as a sex symbol and a jiggle television star. And I think it's so interesting that, like, the very first thing that they do is steal her clothes and then dress up the lunch encounter monster in her clothes. And I think, like, monsters always, in Henson's work, were kind of like this destabilizing force of like just breaking all of the boundaries of what people could do. Is like all of a sudden you have a monster come in and eat people. It's significant for me. I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts about specifically this cold open. And I just generally love seeing the lunch counter monster every time I get a chance.
Oh yeah, it's a cool looking puppet.
I have weird face blindness for lunch encounter monster. Like I never recognize him.
Yeah.
Her, them. I never recognize them. Weird. Every time. I'm just like, and there's a monster. And then like I see in the outline it's a lunch encounter monster for the podcast. I'm like, oh yeah.
I have that with Gorgon Heap. Or I did for a very long time. And now I remember that I have a face blindness for Gorgon Heaps. And now when I see him, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the one I can never remember.
Fair enough. Yeah. Statler and Waldorf have a moment during the theme song.
Hey, would you guys be quiet? We're trying to heckle up here.
Now that we're at the end of the season, I think it's interesting how many of these literal interstitial bits have been Statler and Waldorf, even though at the beginning of the season, it seemed like they were taking the advantage of the new season to be more flexible with the space. We got some backstage bits with Beauregard or Gonzo or whatever. And it's a little bit of a disappointment that, not that I don't like Statler and Waldorf, but, we got a taste of something more creative, but only a taste.
I'm not mad about it. I'm always happy to see them. All right, Gonzo blows his trumpet. It sounds like a bell ringing. You can decide whether it sounds to you like a telephone, which is what the wiki says, or an alarm clock, which is what the captions say. It sounds like all those things.
Yeah, that sounds like
buzzer.
That sounds like an alarm clock. That's not a telephone at all.
It's a telephone. In 1979, that was a telephone. It was the past. It was.
I hear doorbell now that you say doorbell.
Doorbell? What doorbell sounds like that?
An apartment doorbell.
Can you play that clip again?
I lived in an apartment in 1979.
So it's a very specific kind of mechanism.
Alarm clock.
Where when the electric current is turned on, it creates like a vibrating hammer that beats the bell. And it's the same mechanism that was in certain phones and certain alarm clocks. And yes, certain kinds of doorbells.
I need to go fix this on the wiki. If it says telephone on the wiki, I gotta go do something about that.
All right, let's go backstage.
Muppet Show backstage.
Okay, so this week backstage, Fozzie is attempting to mature as an adult bear.
I've been reading a book here on self-improvement.
Yeah.
And it says, I should ask my boss, that's you, to make a list of my good points and my bad points.
Oh, Fozzie, you don't want me to do that.
Oh, but Kermit, I do. You see, it will help me to grow into a more mature and adult bear.
Well, okay, if you really want me to.
Oh, thank you, Kermit, thank you.
I want to note that the piano that we're hearing is Rolf on stage. So we're looking at them at Kermit's desk backstage. And I like knowing what's happening on stage while they're chatting. That. It's really cute. Rolf is like, all right, I'm going on for my piano piece. And also there's a bust of Beethoven that's just sitting on Kermit's desk this whole episode. We don't know. It's clearly not there to be part of Rolf's bit. It's just hanging out.
Yeah.
And making snide comments to people.
We'll come back to him.
Yeah.
So Fozzie's kind of going through it this season, right? Like he went to therapy and now he's reading a self-improvement book.
Yeah, Raquel Welch made a man out of him.
Yeah.
Or made a bear out of him.
It feels like that feels like kind of a third, like first season, I don't think he had any kind of like self-consciousness about himself at all.
Yeah, his sincere desire for growth is really impressive.
Yeah.
When you take
Inspiring.
it with the totality of, who Fozzie is.
It's a shame that for all of his good intentions, it doesn't seem like he's really changing.
No, it never works.
But E for effort, Fozzie.
Yes.
This is also the season that we've learned quite a bit about human resources and management at the Muppet Show, and no annual reviews, apparently. It's not a thing that's ever crossed Kermit's mind.
No, you have to go and read a book.
And then
You have to ask for the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had jobs like that.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. So Fozzie encourages Kermit to be honest, brutally honest, but gentle. Later in the episode, he comes back and he makes the mistake of peeking at Kermit's notes. Kermit has not completed the list, but he has a little notepad.
Oh, no. I'm not that. Kermit, look at this. Look. I don't believe this. Okay, sometimes I may be a little... Oh, Kermit, not this.
Well, Fozzie, I think I better explain.
No.
You see,
no, Kermit, it's okay. It's okay. I can understand how you might think that I have these bad points.
oh, well, actually, that list is your good points.
Oh. Also, when he says, look at this, he's showing the list to the bust of Beethoven.
Yes.
Like, you'll never believe this. It's so cute. And every time he walks by the bust of Beethoven, and every time he walks by him, he's like, oh, excuse me. Just talks to the bust of Beethoven. It's really cute.
And if you wanted to make a similar list, you could do it in your very own Muppeturgy brand notebook. Available now, Muppeturgy.com/store.
Ooh, which one would you get if it's to write down the good and bad points of your direct reports?
Well, in fact, I already do that in one that says, what, and get out of show business?
Perfect.
Yeah.
To any of my direct reports who are listening, I don't actually do that in that notebook, although I do have that notebook.
Oh, do you make your direct reports? Do you make your direct reports listen to your podcast?
Make them.
I don't make them. They do it because they love it. One of them has been a guest on the show.
I'm friends with two of them. Like, I'm
All right.
going to look in your notebook and tell them what you said.
It's a small, small world.
Yep.
As we're talking about the bust of Beethoven, I just need to say that looking at it in the combination of both in close-up, which I don't think we've seen before, and also HD, that is not kind to this particular puppet.
Didn't bother me.
Oh, it just, the illusion of it being anything other than foam is totally gone.
It feels appropriate for a curmudgeonly bust of Beethoven to be very imperfect.
There's one wonky eye.
Yeah, and a wonky jaw. Can we hear the Flintstone-esque little thing that he says about being a bust of Beethoven?
And if I remember my history, Beethoven was supposed to be deaf.
I'm not Beethoven, dummy. I'm a bust of Beethoven.
Of course.
It's a job. You gotta do something for a living, and I'm a bust of Beethoven. Any more questions?
He's so surly. I love him.
It raises interesting questions about the difference between Muppet Job and Muppet Identity.
That is one of my favorite jokes. Like, I have a lot of favorite Muppet Show jokes, but that is definitely one of them.
Because, like, if you're a Muppet and you look like that,
yeah,
what do you have other job opportunities?
Right? Like, could he have been something else?
I mean, this is one of those, like, this is my kind of theoretical thing, but, like, it's one of these moments where there's this lovely, like, reshifting of identity where things both are and aren't what they seem at the same time, which I think is, like, you know, for the Muppets, like, you didn't see this kind of joke in the Muppet Valentine show where it's like, this is a dog and he does dog things the whole time. And by now, like, you can actually do, I think, is like a kind of more complex joke, like a more intelligent joke that I think they kind of like worked up to through like several years of Muppet Show wackiness.
Does that help to address the question that sometimes comes up in Muppet Show episodes of like things that happen on stage, but then they're also happening off stage?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that answers some questions that I've had.
Well, you mean, and also just like the times when like they're doing something backstage and it's okay that nothing is happening on stage because we're doing
that remains an unanswered question.
We're doing with the Valerie
Harper. We'll do this one just for us.
Yeah.
This is making me think about something I hadn't occurred to me. Later on, there's a moment where Cheryl Ladd has a dummy, like a sparring dummy, which is just a dummy, but it could be a Muppet.
Everybody's got to do something for a living. I'm
there's
Cheryl
no
Ladd's
reason.
dummy.
It's like this. There was this tweet a few years ago that went viral that like if one of the toys in Toy Story died, the humans would never know and would just keep playing with it.
Oh,
right. So
geez.
it's sort of like that. Like that dummy could be a Muppet and could be alive,
Could be a dead Muppet.
but it's not. Like it's very clearly not. It's just a dummy. But like that line is really blurry.
Yeah,
where like an object that's made of fabric and stuffing could be.
Yeah.
Well, in one episode, the wardrobe is very much a Muppet. In
Right.
another, it's a set piece.
Right.
Yeah.
Fozzie has a teddy bear. Like these are all like weird little things.
Fozzie also builds a puppet.
Yeah.
You
But
live.
he's
You
a
just
real
live in
puppet
this
bear.
world where like anything could possibly be alive and sentient.
It's the dark purgatory of the sitcom Reset.
The Fozzie bit is billed as the plot of this episode, even though it only kind of lasts for
Like 2 scenes.
a couple of backstage segments,
Yeah.
and then we never hear about it again. There's no follow-up. We don't know if Fozzie took this feedback and then used it as the gift that feedback is.
Well, it kind of like it passes off to Gonzo is the weird thing. That there's kind of like these. It's actually an episode that has sort of 2 running storylines. It's just the
Yeah.
Fozzie one, and then it kind of peters out, and then Gonzo picks it up, and then that's the storyline for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, Fozzie wanders away from Kermit's desk, and then a few minutes later, Gonzo wanders over,
Yeah,
saying that he's here for his hypnotism act, and Kermit's like, we're not doing that, that's terrible. But yeah, this is also happening backstage this week. Gonzo has a brood of chickens under his sway. They are literally swaying. They're hypnotized, they have teeny tiny pupils, they're swaying back and forth as Gonzo kind of conducts them and tells them what to do.
Hypnotized chickens?
Yes, they're in my power.
Gonzo, I don't believe this.
Oh, sure. See, I hypnotize them and then I can get them to do anything I want.
All of my sexual assault red flags went up at this scene with the sight of a flock of hypnotized chickens enthrall the Gonzo on a set that is lit with bisexual lighting.
I totally understand the red flags, but what he's actually asking them to do is like change their identity. And so these are now chickens who believe that they're dogs. And it feels like this, like my whole kind of theory about this is that the Muppets kind of open up this space, as Gonzo always does, for like other modes of identity and ways of being in the world. I recently saw on Facebook, there's a self-identified gay Muppet fan who posts on Facebook, and he gets really bothered by queer readings of like Gonzo specifically around like the transgender baby Gonzo thing, or like Ernie and Bert or whatever.
Oh, I know who this is.
No, I want to know who it is. But
I have seen him mount this curious defense of Gonzo as heterosexual and saying like, no, he's not gay. He's a weirdo, which I think like spectacularly misses the entire point of Gonzo as a character, as well as the entire point of being gay. Like, it's just like a person who's just like born with no sense of camp. Like in the Steve Martin episode, Gonzo has this dancing cheese act, and he tells Kermit that the cheese is named Yolanda because it would look weird if he was dancing with a male cheese. And if you look at that and you say, okay, but that establishes canonically that is a literal, straightforward expression of heterosexuality, like, you're not allowed to watch the Muppets anymore. I hate to be judgmental like this, but like, you need to go and think about what you've done. Like, you need to understand Gonzo a little bit better than what that is. So that is how I see Gonzo here, is like kind of like opening the space where it is okay for chickens to be dogs. It is okay for him not to have a species, etc.
I mean, if it weren't for how creepy that is when Gonzo says he can make the chickens do anything he wants.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the next line is animal impressions. Like I cut it to make it creepy. I cut the clip to make it creepy.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah. Anything I want. Well, like what? Animal impressions.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Yes. I made a choice.
Yeah.
Also, so does that mean that he's
Yeah.
asking them to believe they're dogs, or is he asking them to bark like dogs?
Well, when he says sick 'em, he wants them to attack dog Kermit.
And there's like there's one chicken kind of like at the end who's like, "Rrr?"
I thought she meows.
Oh no, you're
She
right.
does meow.
Yeah, no, she meows.
Yeah, she meows when
they're on the stage.
Like dogs are mean and
Right.
cats are nice in this paradigm, which
That's
no.
how it works.
Oh well, this universe is totally upside down.
Right.
This is
because the
subversion
response
at
to,
its finest.
Kermit gets him to calm down and she meows. But this is also a very 70s trope of, and it's though it's still, I just listened to a podcast about this. I'll have to find it. It's still a thing, like the hypnotist act.
Oh yeah,
like the Vegas style.
I mean, there was one off Broadway this year.
So that's kind of what they're riffing on.
Yeah, and actually, it's like the like the really traditional use of that trope is to make people cluck like a chicken. Like you hypnotize people and then you make them cluck like a chicken. And so the joke here is that like we do that to chickens.
It'd be funny if he hypnotized them to think they were chickens. And they made like real chicken sounds instead of Muppet chicken sounds. That would further confuse this whole subversion deal that we're doing.
You know what's funny? This is the only piece of this episode that was deeply familiar to me. It's on one of those VHS compilations. It just seems like an odd one to isolate. But
well, because it works in isolation. And the part that I think was on the tape didn't include the chickens. I think it was just the Gonzo Statler World War stuff.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that bit.
Yes.
Gonzo does manage to make it on stage for his hypnotism act. It requires a volunteer, and Gonzo gets no takers.
You'll live to regret this.
We intend to.
I just don't understand you people. Immortality is up for grabs. But you don't deserve it.
No, but you do.
What a terrific idea. I'll hypnotize myself. I'll go down in history.
So Gonzo proceeds to whip out a very snazzy little hand mirror. It's really cute. He hypnotizes himself, which enables him to march over to this 5,000-pound weight that's dangling from the ceiling. He says, release the ropes, and the rope just slides down so you can sort of see that the weight is balanced on Gonzo's little finger. And then he snaps, which is the cue for his hypnosis to end. He comes out of it, and then he gets squashed down under this gigantic weight. So he's this tiny little nub of a Gonzo on the floor, and he just wisecracks from the floor for the rest of the episode.
Super cute.
It's cute, disturbing, and cute.
Yeah. All the things.
Yeah.
In the way that Gonzo should always be.
Yeah. I mean, he's alive. He seems fine. He's just flat.
He's been through worse.
Yeah. He's gone from the purple tuxedo to this, like, similarly purple, but more, like, lavender and shiny tuxedo. I don't know if they built this for this episode because they had something matching that they could squish. I don't know. It's nice.
It is nice.
There's a couple really nice bits of puppetry in this that I noticed. When the weight is released, Gonzo's holding it up with his arm, but it's being held by a rope. And so when the rope is released, he just he shakes his arm just the tiniest bit, sort of to indicate that the weight has shifted, which is so subtle and so good. And then when he snaps his fingers, obviously he can't snap his fingers, but he moves his arm in this way, and there's a sound effect, obviously, but it's just like subtle, and like they didn't need to do that, but it sells it really nicely. And when he's squished, they do that thing we've seen before where he's having a conversation with Kermit. And they're two totally different shots. They're cutting from Kermit at his desk, looking down to Gonzo elsewhere on the floor. But it's, the editing is really nice, and it just sells the height and the illusion really well. I just love when they do stuff like that.
They also make really great use out of Gonzo's eyelid mechanism for this. When he hypnotizes himself, and he says, let your mind go blank, and his eyelids go really wide. And then he says, your eyes are getting heavy, and they get heavy. And then he does this little zombie march when he walks over to the weight as though he's hypnotized. It's all very cute and really nicely done. You believe that he is both the hypnotized and the hypnotizer.
Dave Goals, good at his job.
Yeah.
Hey, Kermit! It went terrific!
He says it went terrific, but I know how he really feels.
How's that?
About so high.
As long as we're backstage, I just want to point out my favorite Muppet of the day. We sometimes hear this off-screen stagehand when Kermit is trying to make an intro, and I love this voice. I love this character, even though I've never met him.
But right now it's time for our closing number. Are we ready back there?
Who wants to know?
I do.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, boss.
You've never met Cookie Monster?
I don't think I've met Cookie Monster.
Now it's time to talk about Wov, Twoo Wov, or maybe just some songs.
True.
die with nothing to
That sped up thing makes me laugh every single time. So this is a song called True Love. It is a Cole Porter song from 1956. It was written for the movie High Society, in which it is sung by Bing Crosby. Man, there must have been like mega Bing Crosby fans in the Muppet writers' room.
I think it's just that Bing Crosby was such an omnipresent part of American culture for the first half of the 20th century.
I guess, but they tend to go pretty deep into the well. Anyway, Bing Crosby and...
Should have stayed deep in the well.
Bing Crosby and Grace Kelly sang this in the movie, though it was mostly Bing. And it was number 3 on Billboard's most played by disc jockeys chart in 1956. And that was one of the 3 charts that were the precursors that got folded into the Hot 100, which started in 1958. The other 2 were most played in jukeboxes and bestsellers in stores.
So this song was Cole Porter's last big hit, or at least I would consider that. That depends on your feelings about the song Come to the Supermarket.
And it was recorded by several friends of the Muppets, including noted daughter of noted Joe Raposo stan Frank Sinatra, Nancy Sinatra. And Elton John recorded it in, I believe, the late 90s, early 2000s, as a duet with Kiki D.
And also, I found out that Elvis did this, which shocked me.
He did?
I had no idea that Elvis recorded any Cole Porter.
Yeah.
I was surprised to find out this was Cole Porter, because I was sure this was some Moist FM nonsense. Instead of some Cole Porter nonsense.
I mean, but it is also
Cole
a song
Porter.
that sounds like a yawn. Like, it just...
Yeah.
It's so...
I mean,
don't know.
they are openly making fun of the song.
They are, yes. I just expect better of Cole Porter, I guess. And this is not good.
So should we explain what we're looking at?
I suppose.
Yes.
It's Miss Piggy and Link Hogthrob kind of dressed for the jungle. Link is wearing a loincloth, but also a leisure 70s shirt over the...
He seems to have shaved his chest since we saw him last.
No, there is a big tuft of blonde hair.
Is there?
Sticking out. Yeah, believe me, as our resident Link Hogthrob chest hair expert.
Enthusiast.
But it does seem like there's less of it than we have seen in other previous Link chest hair experiences.
Yeah, it's a Tarzan, right? He's Tarzan and Jane, but he is wearing a shirt. It's weird.
Yeah. That's the thing that I thought was really funny, that like the thing about Tarzan is that he wears that little loincloth, but then he has like the body that you see. And so I just thought it was really funny that like they just decided that Link was not, he was not going to do that.
I wonder if that's just because if you show too much of Link's body, he stops.
He looks like a puppet. Yeah.
Yeah, like then there's a question of like, does he have nipples? How many nipples does he have? He's a pig. Is it like a whole series of nipples? Like, better to just show, a little bit of chest.
This is why pigs don't get big roles in superhero blockbusters these days.
Mm.
I also love that even the jungle Piggy has her lavender gloves on.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's prepared for all eventualities.
We should probably say that part where the song like speeds up and turns into like a little razzle dazzle, that is not in the original arrangement of this song.
What?
And it is so out of left field here. Like, there's no real reason for it. None of it makes sense. Like,
would you rather just watch Piggy and Link do their Moist FM thing?
No, but I just don't understand like the story that this sketch is telling. Like, they're in love on a honeymoon in the jungle.
Yeah.
And then eventually the jungle animals, there are just too many of them and they get in their way and Piggy's feeling crowded. That is the ultimate story. But like, why in the middle?
Okay, I got this. Don't worry about it. Okay. I'm coming in with my post-structuralism again.
You're going to swing in Tarzan style.
Yeah, a little bit. Like, at this point, do I have to explain like the queer reading of this as like a performance of heteronormativity?
No, I think that's pretty clear.
I mean, that's just Link at all times. Yeah,
obviously.
That's
exactly. That's like they're singing this super sappy song that is clearly not supposed to be like taken as, for one thing, just because we know, because this is a weird thing that we know that like, no, Piggy has a different person that she's in love with. But also just like in general that Miss Piggy is like the most famous long form drag performance in history. And
you mean
like
Frank Oz or Piggy herself?
Miss Piggy, yeah. And because Frank Oz and then it's not like when Frank Oz stopped it, there started to be a female performer that would it kind of would ruin like the whole thing of what she is, which is a drag character, who is, I think you can see all of the Miss Piggy and Kermit dynamic over several years as being essentially the story of like a drag queen like wearing down the resistance of a heterosexual dude until he like gets to the point where he's okay and wants to marry her. And so like that's what's going on, I think, in the song, is that this is actually like it's a parody of a love story, of like a love song with this song that's super boring. And then here's this like drag character, and Link is basically like a drag character for masculinity as well. Just like obviously like trying to present as the most masculine guy, which then, underneath, not even very far underneath, that we know that he's just kind of like a big sop. And so I think like the jungle animals are coming in. It's just like, we are tired of these people. Like, it's a boring song. These are, if we were supposed to take these people at all seriously, these would be incredibly boring people. And so it's just like the jungle just intrudes and kind of says, no, this is not okay. We can't have this on television right now.
I guess that is a helpful response to my discomfort with seeing Piggy and Link together. Because it's not just that, I would rather see her doing a number with Kermit. It's more that this is never gonna happen. So, if you're saying that it's a mockery and a performance, then that
is what I feel.
Yeah, that's a good framing.
I'll buy it.
I like them together in like the Muppet Show meta plot,
Piggy and Link,
which we haven't seen a ton of yet, right? But like in addition to what Danny is saying, that they're like, because Kermit is not on stage very much, right? So, right, the Piggy and Link are the performers who are meant to be together on stage. But we know that they hate each other, or we know that she hates him at least, right? We see that in
not meant to be in the world of Pigs in Space, where like they're coworkers who
like in the world of the Muppet Show
banter and dislike each other.
Yeah, in the world of the Muppet Show, they are coworkers, and they make
She's
logical
the leading
sense.
lady, and he's the leading man.
Yeah, I mean, he's not really the leading man, but like they make logical sense as performers who would be paired together often, and whenever they are, it's a disaster. In no small part because she loathes him, and I like that as a running plot that mostly so far has played out in Pigs in Space. But I don't object to seeing it here, and I would like to see it maybe with a better song next time. But I think it's a good joke for me. I don't really get tired of it.
Me Waldorf, you Statler. No, you Waldorf, me sick.
That was the best they could do.
I know, really.
Yeah.
So for something completely different, Cheryl Ladd and the Clodhoppers take us to New Orleans.
Make room, give me some air. I got some rhythm to spare. We'll all swing high, swing low. Everybody's rocking to and fro. It ain't fast or slow, but all that.
So this is a delightful little ditty called South Rampart Street Parade. And I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with this because the music is by Bob Haggart and Ray Boddick, which are names that if you're really, really paying close attention to our show, you'll remember because they wrote Big Noise from Winnetka, which we heard a while back. But the lyrics are by Steve Allen, and Steve Allen was a fixture of 50s, 60s, 70s TV. And he was born in 1921, and the song was from 1937. So I'm assuming that he added these lyrics a lot later. The original version was by Bob Crosby and his orchestra, and it was an instrumental. And it's worth looking up. It slaps hard.
Bob Crosby, brother of Bing Crosby, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Just to tie that back in.
Another Crosby.
Too many Crosbys on the dance floor.
Too many Crosbys.
Chrissy mentioned Steve Allen, and I just wanted to fill in a little more details. We may have talked about him before because he does, loom large in this era of songwriting and television, but he's less familiar, I think, to listeners today. So he was, I think, probably most famously the co-creator and the first host of The Tonight Show, but he essentially invented late night TV as a genre as we know it today, or like the late night talk show. But as a songwriter, he also wrote The Standard, This Could Be the Start of Something Big, and the theme for Picnic, and a whole bunch of other songs that have persisted over the years. And also I found out that he was the creator of that show, Meeting of the Minds, that we talked about earlier this season, which is the one that had actors as various historical figures appearing together on a panel format talk show on PBS. I don't remember when that came up, but...
as historical figures?
Yes.
Yeah, it was real weird.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I never knew about that.
We can thank Steve Allen for that.
Thanks, Steve Allen.
I know Steve Allen primarily as a fixture on mid-century panel game shows.
Well, and he also has...
That tracks.
He's important to the whole story of Jim Henson. Because that was their first big break. That Henson was on... they were doing like Sam and Friends on WRC, like local programming in Washington, D.C. And then Steve Allen heard about it, and I think, and saw them. And then brought like Henson and the Muppets to come and do some stuff on The Tonight Show. And that was like their first big national break. He was, I think, like a big supporter of Henson.
So Rampart Street is a street in New Orleans, as you probably could have guessed from the Dixielandness of it all. Yeah, and Cheryl Ladd is dressed pretty much in a costume almost identical to Sylvester Stallone's Bird in a Gilded Cage costume.
Oh, he is, yeah.
You think they recycled the sleeve garters?
The sleeve garters, yeah. Now that I know what they're called.
So I didn't know this song prior to hearing it here, but get big Cy Coleman vibes from it, and not just because it's staged like a Bob Fosse number.
I mean, it's staged like a very specific... I have ripped off a Bob Fosse number from Sweet Charity. Step for step, Norman Mean.
Yeah.
Aww.
I mean, I loved it. But yeah, it's really got Sweet Charity written all over it. I kind of want to do a side-by-side comparison, and I might later look for it in the show notes. I also might not, so don't look that hard.
I mean, do you think that it was actually like an inspiration?
It has to be. I mean, that opening pose when the curtain opens is.
Oh yeah, okay.
Like, it's also not like that's a super unique thing, but I also think at this moment in time, the movie
with the
was
bowler
not that
hat
old.
and the hand isolations, like it's very
yeah.
Oh yeah,
and like I'm a Brass Band is accompanied by a brass band. Like it's this, but steal from the best.
Yeah,
and it's a ton of fun. I mean. She's got a band of clodhoppers, whom you may remember from the Valerie Harper episode.
There are fewer clodhoppers here than there, right?
I think so, and they're also really well used here. Like I didn't find them the least bit creepy in this context.
Yeah,
I need to put in a word for Timmy Monster.
Please.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't mentioned him. I love him in this. I don't have like a thing, but like he's just so cute coming in, and so like Timmy Monster comes like. I think in the clip, it kind of ended with her going, "Rah!"
Yeah,
like,
that was
and
his
that's
entrance.
because, that's because like here comes this big, bizarre looking, like blue and green, shaggy monster with a bowler hat on, who like comes and dances with her and like actually does some steps, and like obviously,
they're doing lifts.
Yeah,
he seems like a good dance partner.
And like, so there's some things that he can't do. So there's like a couple of places where like the two of them have the same step, and then he kind of like holds while she does something complicated with her feet that like Timmy Monster clearly cannot do. But it's like up to that moment he could do it. And the thing that I really like is there's a couple of times during the number when Cheryl Ladd like looks at him and then does a take to the audience. And the first time she kind of gives him the hairy eyeball, and then she looks at the audience and kind of shakes her head. And then later in the song, he has like a little soft shoe moment. And she looks at him and then she does this take to the audience and she's like, well, okay, then I guess he's pretty good. Like, I just think that is this really fun little, like through line for the whole number is Timmy Monster kind of like proving himself as a dance partner. Such a cutie.
It's really cute.
Am I the only one who was getting Olivia Newton-John's Wednesday matinee alternate vibes from Cheryl Ladd?
It's funny you say that because I listened to Cheryl's first album, and my reaction was, oh, this is sort of Olivia Newton-John without that little extra something. So that is definitely part of her vibe.
I mean, she's great in this number. She's very present and charismatic. And even though there are clodhoppers and Timmy Monster happening, like, you just want to look at her face.
Yeah, she actually stands out. Yeah. So it's a good number.
This week's UK spot is maybe my least favorite UK spot of all time.
Really?
Wowzers.
Yeah.
It's also not on Disney Plus, so
there's Any Old Iron, and then there's Swarms.
Right. So this is not on Disney Plus. It's on YouTube. You don't have to watch it, but if you want to, it'll be on our website.
But you have to listen to a clip of it.
You get Scooter in a really cute outfit.
You do. I don't actually hate this, but here's a clip.
There's a new sound, the newest sound around, the strangest sound that you have ever heard. Not like a wild boar or a jungle lion's roar. It isn't like the cry of any bird. But there's a new sound, it's deep down in the ground, and everyone who listens to it squirms because it's new sound. So deep down in the ground is the sound that's made by worms. There's a new sound.
Look, I just hate a one-chord song.
And only 2 notes. Even just one more note would have helped.
Also, those are all of the lyrics. The whole thing just repeats and goes up a tone, right? But like
it goes up and gets faster.
Going. Like, the only reason I don't hate it is because it's the Muppet Show and it's Scooter and there are some cute worms. Like, there's no other context in which I would ever enjoy it. Like, you couldn't even like write another verse about the worms? Like, that's it? That's the whole thing? I don't understand. Please, Christy, help me understand. Tell me about this song.
So this song, I was at least pleased to learn, is intentionally bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's a relief.
Oh yeah, no, you don't get this bad just by accident.
Oh, sure you do.
you gotta really work at it.
To practice.
Yeah. So it's called There's a New Sound, and it was originally performed by Tony Borello. It was written by Tony Borello and Tom Murray in 1953. And they had realized that there was a trend of bad novelty singles. And so they were like, we're going to cash in on this. So it was the one and only single released by their label, Horrible Records. And the B-side of it was a song called Fish, recorded by Leona Anderson, who was a silent film actress who was having a career revival as the world's most horrible singer.
Oh, dear.
And she later put out an album called Music to Suffer By. I listened to a little bit of it. I mean...
It was good.
You do you. It's a lot.
Did Tony Borello do anything else?
He was a jazz pianist, I believe, is his primary career.
Yeah.
On the record label for the single, it's listed as vocal ? With monotone calliope.
Oh my goodness.
And I have to share this beautiful gem from the Wikipedia entry about this song. When Billboard magazine reviewed the single, it commented, "A weird one. The new sound is the sound made by worms. Strange sound effects go with nonsense lyric. It's a studied attempt to be as screwy as possible. Quien sabe?" For the flip side, Fish, Billboard's review was, same comment.
In the version that's released digitally, there is a third track, which is called Rats in My Room, but I've not listened to it.
Rats in My Room. Well, so I especially hate this song, and I think like anyone who was a Muppet fan in 1978 hates this song, because it was on the second Muppet Show record.
Sure was.
Yes, that's how I know it.
Yeah, the Muppet Show 2, which is a fantastic record, in which I listen to again and again. But this is it's the third song it's the third track on side A. There's like the Muppet Show theme. And then there's Babyface sung by chickens, which is fantastic. And then there's a new sound with Scooter, which like then you have to get up and move the needle so that you don't have to. You just like pick it up and then like put it down for the next track.
Because any charm that this song has comes from the visuals. Putting it on a record is just evil.
And And because it was a UK spot, like, as far as I was concerned, it's not even from the Muppet Show. I was like, what is this? I had watched every single episode 1 billion times, as many times as I could. And I didn't know this random song. So I thought it was just something evil that they did, that Scooter did to inflict upon us for the album. So I just had to like skip past it. And then, later on it's Happy Feet. So everything's okay.
So this song sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole of fact checking. So I would like to share some things that I've learned. First of all, lions do not live in jungles. There's no such thing as a jungle lion. According to BBC Earth, their habitats include scrubland, grasslands, savannas, and rocky hills, but not jungles.
So these worms do not sound like a jungle lion's roar because nothing does.
Correct. Second, earthworms do not actually make sounds, except for those produced by the movement of their bodies against the earth around them. However, according to Science magazine, sponge-dwelling worms may be one of the noisiest animals in the sea, and we'll include that article in the show notes.
Yeah, thanks for not bringing a clip.
However, I was curious about that sound that is produced by earthworms' bodies, and in 2014, Wired Magazine's Absurd Creature of the Week column reported on a 6-foot-long earthworm that made a sound akin to a gurgling bathtub as it burrowed through the wet mud in which it made its home.
Okay.
And yes, that article, which does include a picture of the 6-foot-long earthworm, will be in the show notes as well.
Okay, we've all seen Dune. We know how this goes.
Gross. Also gross. This was not the first iteration of this from Henson and Co. It appeared as an early Sam and Friends bit with a puppet that was made from the skull of a squirrel.
Oh, gross.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like...
So, I mean, you say that, but that's just the skull of a squirrel, right? Like, that's just somebody with a skull of a squirrel on their hand, right? Like, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they might have sewed a body onto it or something.
I guess so.
But I love this quote from Jim, though. He says, we used it to lip sync to this terrible song called There's a New Sound. It has only one chord and it would drive people crazy. I was convinced no one else at the station ever watched the show because there was never a complaint or an attempt at censorship of any kind. God, can you imagine like watching TV in like the 50s and seeing a squirrel skull singing this horrible song?
Well, I like that idea.
It didn't appear out of nowhere, like
right. I do like that idea though of like an animal skull like singing the song makes so much more sense than like Scooter in a miner outfit.
By the way, if you have not listened to the original version of the song, which we will include on our Spotify playlist of Muppeturgy songs, it is so much less pleasant than Scooter's version.
Oh.
I'll leave that to your imaginations for now.
Yeah.
We'll not plug that in here.
Let's please cleanse the palate immediately with some gender essentialism.
You know what I admire most about you?
Well, I'd like to guess. My big blue eyes, my beautiful blonde hair, my sylph-like figure.
Nope, your chops.
What?
Your chops, your karate chops.
I like that.
Right.
Yes,
You know
of
what?
course.
You're really super. I've seen you in action.
Well, I've seen you deck a few baddies yourself.
After all, we have to protect ourselves. We are just helpless girls.
When men say I'm cute and funny, my teeth aren't but pearls. I just laugh it up like a girl.
I flip when the fella sends me flowers.
I drool over
Talk on the telephone for hours.
with a pound and a half of cream upon his face.
What?
I love this so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my favorite bit in the entire episode. So this is I Enjoy Being a Girl, which is a Rodgers and Hammerstein song. It's from the musical Flower Drum Song from 1958. It was originated in that show by Pat Suzuki, who's still alive as of now, which I found surprising.
Now you've jinxed it.
I mean, probably.
As of
I
this
said as of
recording.
now.
Yeah.
She's in her 90s, but she's still around. And yeah, I for as problematic as this song is, sort of, I often point to this song as an example of what Rodgers and Hammerstein brought to each other. There's that famous quote from Stephen Sondheim about how he said, Oscar Hammerstein was a man of limited talent and infinite soul, and Richard Rodgers was a man of infinite talent and limited soul.
Yowza.
Yeah, it's a harsh burn, but
not inaccurate.
But not inaccurate. And what the melody does to elevate these words, I think, is extraordinary.
It's so catchy. It's been stuck in my head all day.
So catchy.
It's so problematic. Please stop. But
it's catchy and it's propulsive and it's very assertive.
But it also has a wink to it. Like it is not supposed to be taken straightforward, not in its original context, and not really in any context that it's ever been put in since.
Yeah.
Except the Sesame Street iteration of it.
Which is
That's
weird.
Like just straight up gender essentialist. Oh, those boys are having so much fun playing football, but we don't need that.
Oof.
We're girls. We're delicate.
Yeah.
Let's play dress up.
Well, before we get too far away, I just want to say a word about Flower Drum Song.
Please do.
Because although it is considered sort of a B-tier Rodgers and Hammerstein show and movie, it is pretty important in the history of musical theater as the first show to tell an Asian American story with a cast made up primarily but not exclusively of Asian American actors. And although the musical was written by three white guys, in addition to Rodgers and Hammerstein, Joseph Fields, brother of Dorothy, co-wrote the book with Oscar. It is based on a novel by Chinese American author CYU. The novel is great. It holds up. It's much darker than the musical, but it's a good read. I recommend it.
And it has been revised. It's not done very much, but if you see it now, you're not seeing that book.
Well, both versions are available, so you might see the original version, or you might see the revised.
You're more likely to see the revised by an actual Chinese American person book.
Also, I remembered what the Western reference was that Danny had said to me originally. His quote was, "I enjoy being a girl is fairly pivotal in Western culture, and probably I have things to say about it."
This is the song that kind of like drew me to this episode as kind of a queer theory examination, because absolutely, like, the song is ridiculously gender essentialist, as you say, and gender essentialist in like kind of a vicious, like, if you take all of these lines seriously, it's just the worst thing. But it's performed with more than a wink by this, long form drag performance by Miss Piggy, as well as then Cheryl Ladd, who was kind of in this duality between like jiggle television performer and hard, tough private detective, which is what they're kind of like bantering about at the beginning, that Miss Piggy is a character who can be excessively feminine and still be super strong and push people around. And as we see here, like totally free apparently to just assault Kermit in the privacy of a dressing room for minutes with no consequence. And Cheryl Ladd, because she's in Charlie's Angels and she has kind of this like private detective cop role, she is able to also kind of like sit in this weird place between, kind of like jiggle television, gender essentialist stuff about like, I talk on the telephone for hours and I sit around and I enjoy dresses made of lace. Miss Piggy basically is a trickster character who basically like wrote herself into the world. That is the thing that I love the most about her. And that happened right around like now in the show, like 1978, 1979 is the moment when like the Muppet Show was really popular. But Miss Piggy specifically became really, really popular, like right here in season 3, and then going into the Muppet movie where obviously she was like a huge star and was extraordinary. The thing that is amazing about her is as like a trickster figure like Loki or Reynard the Fox or Bugs Bunny, a character who can kind of like rewrite the world around her just by asserting the truth as she wants it to be. And then because that is so funny, it kind of like draws everybody else into its gravitational pull because it's just funnier and more interesting than the world without that. And so she like on the show says, I am a huge and famous star. And like she says in the introduction here, like, you love my big blue eyes, my blonde hair, my sylph-like figure. She's just kind of like asserting these things that are obviously untrue and then kind of forcing everyone to come and to be a part of that, because being in that fantasy is more interesting than not. Basically, then she just did that not just within the show, but then also to the entire world, so that she is like, she's on the cover of People magazine as like a huge star and a sex, like people start talking about her in the real world as a sex symbol. And she just kind of like wrote her own place there in this weird kind of intersection of like pretending to be like clearly a drag act. Everybody knew that it was Frank Oz. Everyone knew that it was a guy, but it was so much fun to talk about her as being beautiful and a sex symbol and you know, the peak of femininity. I think that is basically like, that's what my whole queer reading is about. It's just like the Muppets were able to do this, to take everything that was kind of like in these weird little margins stuff, you know, Gonzo sort of being in love with chickens or, you know, dancing with cheese, cross-dressing characters, all of these places where like, there's all these sort of like destabilizing influences around kind of like what somebody's identity is. Miss Piggy especially just like took that and put it out into the world and forced the rest of the world to go along with it. I think like she was kind of, I feel like that's an inspiration for queer folks, I think. I mean, definitely was for me. And I feel like it's that kind of thing that sort of drew queer people specifically to the Muppets and kind of like brought us together to each other, is sort of just like being inspired by these characters who kind of like came up with their own place in the world and then forced everybody else to come and live there.
That's a very lovely vision of the Muppets. I like that.
Yeah, there you go. And it's just so funny.
It's so funny.
And they get to pie Kermit in the face.
They get to pie Kermit in the face. Yeah. It's, you know, it's this song that is so dreadful and just really like taking it apart line by line and beating it up, basically.
Yeah, and beating up everything around them.
Yeah.
I love how much they're responding directly to the song by just, I talk on the telephone for hours, so she just chops the phone in half.
Yeah.
Pound and a half of cream upon my face, pie Kermit in the face with perfect timing. I love the timing of that pie.
Yeah.
It makes me so happy.
Reaction. I mean, that's part of like what Christy was saying about the song, like, and how well the song is constructed. Like, Kermit almost has to react to the pie in rhythm.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it funny, right? That's what makes it so good. Like it's the song is constructed in such a way that it lends itself to this, even though that was never the intention.
Mm-hmm.
I love that we've seen other moments this season where Piggy and the guest star have been at odds, or Piggy and Annie Sue have been at odds. And I love that that's actually what Piggy is expecting when the scene starts. And that's not what happens.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that Cheryl has that little winking, oh, you're a threat, but that it's so joyful, and it's them being joyful together about violence. And, you know, poor Kermit, okay, but whatever. Like, it's so funny, and you can tell, like, in character they're having a good time.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that in real life, Cheryl Ladd and Frank Oz and Jim Henson are all having a really good time. Like, it's just fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really fun to watch.
So we close out the episode in not the forest of despair, but the, you know,
backyard of allergenic lethargy.
Yeah, that's more it.
Sunshine on my shoulders makes me happy.
Sunshine in my eyes can make me cry.
Sunshine on the water looks so lovely.
Sunshine almost always makes me
And this is where the episode loses me.
Oh,
I love like every little bit of this entire episode, and then it hits Sunshine on my shoulder. I'm like, I'm out. I'm good. I got nothing from here.
This is what I was saying earlier, where like I have no use for this song. I never need to hear it ever again. But I love it. It's so sweet. Fozzie's little the head.
When that is the thing, is when Fozzie kind of puts his head on Cheryl's shoulder for a second. That's really beautiful.
Also, that was a longer clip than we usually use, but like I just wanted to get as much of the arrangement in as possible because it was the most 1978 thing that has ever 1978'd.
It really is. Yeah, this one I it was losing me, and then when the whole group came in harmony, suddenly I was like, "Why am I crying? What's happening?" Just it sneaks up on you. So let's talk about the song a little bit. This is "Sunshine on My Shoulders." It's a John Denver song. Future friend of the Muppets, John Denver. It was originally written in 1971. He co-wrote it with. Okay, so I can't figure out if the guy's name is Dick Niss or Dick Kniss.
It's unfortunate, is what it is.
Yeah,
I mean, all I know is that I spent a sizable amount of time last night singing it to that Faith Hill song. You know, Dick Kniss, Dick Kniss. Which one is it?
Oh no!
It is like if Knish and Kiss ran at each other from opposite directions. Then you get a Dickness. And
yeah.
He, by the way, he was the bassist with Peter, Paul, and Mary for like 5 decades, and is considered by their fans, and I think by them, as sort of like the 4th member of their band.
Why isn't it
Peter, Paul, and Mary?
Peter, Paul, and Mary, and
Dickness. I guess that kind of.
I should say was. He passed away a few years ago.
Respect.
Mike Taylor was the other guy.
Mike Taylor was a member of John Denver's band. He co-wrote Rocky Mountain High. Later, gave up music to become an archaeologist.
Wow, props to him.
Yeah, he discovered that his father had a diary leading to the location of the Holy Grail, and
that happens sometimes.
It does. Yeah, I've seen that documentary.
Yeah.
So Sunshine on My Shoulders was a big hit, but later it was released a couple years after it was released as an album track as a single in 1973. And in 1974, it hit #1 on the Hot 100, Billboard's Adult Contemporary chart, and on Cashbox.
Wowzers.
Yeah.
But how many times was it played on jukeboxes?
I mean, it must have been a lot.
God, I hope not very much. What a downer. Be a bar and hear this.
All right, yeah. Night's picking up.
I think with this song, John Denver single-handedly proved that moist music can transcend genre. That it's not just about adult contemporary, but it also can bleed into folk and country.
Yeah, call this moist, but that's a topic for another podcast.
Perhaps.
Call Mark and Sarah for a ruling.
Anyway, he'll be the guest star on the very next episode that we discuss at the start of season 4.
Foreshadowing. Season 4 shadowing.
This is a classic, guest star sings a song surrounded by the Muppets number. There is a weird moment where they're all looking up at her and then they all turn in unison to look at the camera. That read a certain way could actually be extremely creepy. Oh, you're there. Join us.
I liked at the beginning, there's a very lovely subtle butterfly that flies around the bottom of the screen and then we don't see again, which reminds us how far we've come since Florence Henderson.
I mentioned the moment where with Fozzie, Fozzie comes in and leans his head on her shoulder. Perhaps he is Sunshine. And he looks so sad. And there's something about that puppet that I just love, that, right, it can look, waka waka, and also incredibly like soulful and sad and tired. And it's the same puppet. It's the same face. And, it's partly Frank Oz. It's partly the design of it. And I was especially taken by it in that moment.
Well, he just got a list of his bad points.
Exactly. No, I mean, it tracks what's happening in the
He needs a shoulder to lean on.
Actually, if this was like a season 4 episode, that probably would have been connected.
Yeah.
Where it becomes like absolutely part of the show, where you have to connect the backstage and the onstage.
Scooter comes in, she gives him a little boop on the nose. He's had a rough day. He's covered in worms. There's all kinds of stuff going on.
Everyone's had a tough time today.
It is interesting that this ensemble of Muppets doesn't include any of the monsters, but does include 2 of the woodland creatures, which I feel like is a big change in season 3 from what we would have seen if this had been in an earlier season. It also means that in the final tableau, we have 3 Muppets standing next to each other who have 3 totally different, incompatible sets of eyes, which is just sort of weird and creepy.
Yeah, gone are the days of the color coordinated freckles.
That's true.
Never mind that jazz. Listen, Turkey.
What? And get out of show business?
One little bit of show business before we wrap this up. It's pigs in space. Dr. Strangepork has invented a pill that makes pigs invisible.
Oh, I think it's peachy neat.
And because this is 1978 or 79, I've already forgotten what time is, this leads to a war between the genders.
Oh, the pills are beginning to wear off.
Pills, what do you mean? Oh, I get it. Okay, how'd you like a taste of your own medicine?
What do you think she's planning?
I don't know, Link, but let's not stick around to find out.
Yeah.
Link.
Huh?
Uh-oh, too late. We found out.
Yep, that's the whole thing. They just hit each other for no reason. I mean, Piggy has a reason. Link hit her first.
It is a nice kind of rebuttal to the true love number earlier. You know, we talked about how, like, really they actually hate each other. And so this is now kind of later in the episode that actually gets acted out. The weird thing about this sketch really is that Miss Piggy doesn't need to take any pills and become invisible in order to beat the shit out of people.
Just makes the whole thing more insidious if she's invisible.
She could just do it. She just does it all the time.
She could. I really love the idea that after the true love number, like the curtain comes down and they just both resume kicking the shit out of each other.
Yeah, definitely.
This don't make any sense at all.
Well, we have reached the end of everything. It's the end of the episode, the end of the season. So before we say goodbye, I would love to take a moment to look back at season 3 as a whole.
Forget it. It's too late now.
Hey, that was a phone ringing.
We would love to, but we've been recording for 2 hours.
Just very briefly, I'm wondering, like, if you had to sum up season 3, what's your overall impression of the season?
Can you play the I think it's peachy neat?
Oh, I think it's peachy neat.
I love this season. You know, my favorite episodes we've covered so far are in this season. I know that I have more favorites to come, but we're also about to cross the DVD Rubicon. So these are episodes that I think I love, but I have also not seen in even longer than I had not seen these episodes. So, you know, I'm excited for what's coming up. And, you know, but it's weird because, like, the way that we do this, like, it often sounds like I hate things, but I actually really love the Muppet Show. That's why we're here. So, like, yeah, I like a lot of what we talked about the season has been really great, and there have been some very high points. I think the low points have been surprising, and I'm really looking forward to some stuff that I know is coming up, and then to, like, rediscovering stuff that I have not seen since I was a literal child.
Yeah, there were so many episodes that I was really looking forward to this season that met and exceeded my expectations, and given those, I was really surprised by how low the low points were. But there were also some dizzying highs, for sure.
I can sum up my feelings in a haiku. Are you ready?
Show off.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of big swings. Yay, Harry Belafonte. Boo, Spike Milligan.
That does it. You did it.
Terrific! It's about time we had some sophistication on this show.
I think I am a little less enthusiastic about season 3 as a whole than the rest of you, and that's in part because there was so much that was great about it, and so much of that was in the first half of the season. So I'm a little exhausted at this point. And for the most part, the second half of the season has not been bad, Spike Milligan aside, Danny Kaye aside, and sort of the average level of an average episode of season 3 is better than the average level of an average episode of season 1 or 2. But it's been a while since we've had one that made me really light up, and I'm hoping that they're spaced a little better in the seasons to come. Another weird thing for me about season 3 is that even though at this point the show is an international sensation and therefore they can attract sort of a higher caliber of guest, I was less familiar on the whole with the guests of season 3 than I was with seasons 1 and 2, which probably speaks more to, like, my sort of weird old-timey nostalgia matching up with the like over-the-hill guests that they were able to attract in their early seasons. But there's been good and bad to that, because I feel like I've either discovered or gotten to know better a lot of talents who I was not as deeply familiar with, and that's been a nice thing to do this year. Danny, I know you haven't been with us for this whole journey, but do you have thoughts on season 3?
Oh yeah, no, I got thoughts on everything. Season 3, like if you look at the whole arc of the show from season 1 to season 5, I think like the thing that comes together like over the course of the show is the idea that everything can all like work together and tell the same kind of story. So in season 1, I think probably everything up to like the Valerie Harper episode, I think is like the one where they actually figure something out. But most of season 1 is just like running gags, you know, through like backstage. The story is just like Kermit and Fozzie answering the telephone. And then there's a thing on stage, and then there's maybe a thing in a dressing room, but nothing like connects as a story. And, you know, by the time you get to like season 5, there's stuff that is like super rich, like Glenda Jackson is a pirate and Carol Burnett and the dance marathon is like things where every single thing that happens on the show is all sort of telling the same story. And season 3 is where they start to kind of like to get that, and they don't totally get it. So I think like in this Cheryl Ladd episode, like they've got 2 different running stories, but with like the Fozzie thing at the beginning and then the Gonzo thing at the end, and really neither of them really had anything to do with what was happening on stage. But they had what happened this year. It was like Pearl Bailey kind of like coming together. Actually, the Lynn Redgrave, which was like the last one that they filmed where they were doing a whole story of Robin Hood. Like that's really, really new for the show. Is doing something where like everything is all telling one story. And so I think sort of season 3, like you'll get bits of that kind of coming in and out, like Pearl Bailey ending up with the jousting scene where it's just like it's the guest star and like we've seen these characters like preparing for that number over the course of the show. They're kind of like, and Loretta Lynn, actually, the Loretta Lynn one where like everybody's at a train station. Like they're starting to figure out how to tie all this stuff together in really interesting ways. But it's not until like season 4 when I think like that now becomes a thing that they can regularly do.
That's good. And I think that points to exciting things to come, which we are excited to get to when we get there, which we don't know when. We do not know what our return schedule is yet. So stay tuned, everyone. We'll let you know.
Stand by for mid-course correction.
On that note, make sure you are subscribed in the podcast app of your choice, and that said app is not set to stop looking for new episodes if they don't update for a while. I only recently learned that was a thing, and turn that off because some podcasts take breaks, and you want to know when we come back from a break. If that's not your thing, you can follow us on social media. As of this recording, Twitter seems to not be going anywhere. That was much ado about nothing. But who knows? We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. If Twitter goes away, we'll find something else. We're Muppeturgy.
We're on Facebook, too.
We're on Facebook. There's an RSS feed on our website if you're old school. You know, all the things. But yeah, subscribing in your podcast app is the best way to do it. As you have no doubt figured out, we are recording a little bit in advance. So even if we take a break from recording, it may not be as long a break as you take from listening. We might drop some bonus content in there. So, sometime in the spring or possibly very early summer, we'll be back with season 4, and we may have something for you before then. So don't go away. Don't give up on us. We'll be back soon.
And that's a threat.
Speaking of a threat, Danny, we hear you have things to plug.
Yes, I do. Every single person who listens to this should go and check out Muppet Pictures on Twitter and Facebook. Even if you don't use Twitter, like just bookmark it and come by every once in a while because it is delightful and it's just beautiful pictures of the Muppets all the time. So you'll like that. And also, my big project right now is called Superheroes Every Day. It's a comedy blog about the history of superhero movies, starting in 1978 with Superman the movie. And it's tracking how superhero blockbusters became the world's most efficient method of painlessly separating money from the public and then giving it to entirely the wrong people. It is super fun. Currently serving up hot takes on 1983's Superman 3. And I am planning to make a podcast, probably. So if you are listening to this in the future, people of the future, go and check out the Superheroes Everyday podcast. It's going to be really fun. It's superheroeseveryday.com and on Twitter and on Facebook, and come check it out.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to the podcast because I love the blog, but I'm so far behind. And so I can be super far behind in another format as well.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. Excellent.
Thanks so much for joining us. It has been a real thrill to have you here.
Oh, from you too.
Yeah, let's go while the going's good.
Well, I'm glad something's good tonight.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Muppeturgy. Join us in the future. The future. For season 4. You can find us on whatever social media still exists at that point at Muppeturgy or on the web at Muppeturgy.com. Our theme music was composed and performed by Christy Bauer. Our show logo was created by Todd Brian Backus, and this episode was edited by me, David Levy.
I'm worried it's racist, but I don't know why. It just feels like it should be.
It does have that.
Well, it's from the past.
something.
Of course it's racist.